Hello, my name is Robert Dean Steele, and this is your daily Bible class. We've been looking at the book of James. Now we're in James chapter 3, verses 3 right through to verse number 6. Now listen, James starts talking about this thing called the tongue. Yes, the tongue can get us into a lot of trouble. He says we can put bits in the mouths of horses and make them obey us. We can turn the whole animal, or take ships for an example. Although they are large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants it to go. He says, listen, two illustrations here. He says horses and ships. He says we can put the bit in the mouth of a horse and it will go wherever we want. I used to ride horses. Actually, I owned horses for a while. My wife still actually owns a horse. And what she does is she puts that bit in that horse's mouth. And then wherever she takes or puts the rein, that horse is going to follow because of the fact that it bit's in his mouth. And it's the same way with these large ships. We see that, these ships are massive, and yet behind them, in proportion, the rudder is relatively small. But when he turns that wheel, I want to tell you something, that ship goes wherever the pilot wants it to go because of the rudder. Two perfect examples. But then he goes on to say, likewise, the tongue is a very small part of the body, usually less than about 3 inches. And compared to the rest of the body, that's pretty small. But it makes great boasts. Consider a great forest can be set on fire by a small spark. Remember that old song? It only takes a spark to get a fire going. Nice song. And it's true. All it takes is a small spark. And then all of a sudden you got this huge forest fire. And he says it's the same way with the tongue. The tongue may be a small portion of the body, but it can make great boasts. Have you made a great boast? Have you said, hey, I can do this, I can do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that? You speak what's in your heart, and sometimes your heart's not too good. And so that comes out in your speech. He says, be careful of that. Be very, very careful, he says, because the tongue, he says, comes like this. He says, the tongue is a fire. Think about that. Your tongue may be a fire. A world of evil among the parts of the body. Now that's pretty straightforward. He tells you that your tongue is capable of great harm. Have you ever been torn apart by somebody who's torn you down with their tongue? They've said things to you that has absolutely devastated you, decimated you, and destroyed you. Maybe you've been guilty of it doing yourself. Maybe someone's come along and said, you'll never amount to anything. You'll never be any good. Has a parent said that to you? Has a friend said that to you? And you think to yourself, you know what? You're right. Or maybe something inside you says, hey, I'm going to prove you wrong. Either way, it can be a very devastating thing. It can be a motivator as well. But the simple fact is, you have to decide how you're going to react to that tongue. Don't let your tongue be that today. He says it corrupts the whole body. Here is this body trying to serve God, trying to do what God wants it to do. But then on the other hand, what's going on? You start speaking and you destroy your testimony. Maybe you put somebody down. Maybe you said something at the wrong time to the wrong person for the wrong reason. You know what can happen? You can destroy your testimony just that quick. Folks, I've seen it happen so many times. People have come to me and told me that they love God, and then they start speaking something else. And you know what it does? It destroys their testimony. How can someone say they love God and yet speak down about others? How can they say love God when they can put people down? How can they say they love God when they use language they shouldn't be using? That shows the corruption that's in the person's life. He says it sets the whole course of one's life on fire. And he says, and itself set on fire by hell. He says basically what happens is you start speaking and your life will start actually going down the direction of what you speak. If you are speaking encouraging, inspiring, enlightening things into people's life, you know what happens? They begin to see that in your life. But if you speak evil and you put them down and you show favoritism and you cut them down, you know what you're doing? You are setting a course in life. And he says that course can lead to hell. So understand, what you speak is absolutely important. So whatsoever things are right, whatsoever things are holy, whatsoever things are blameless and righteous and pure and virtuous and praiseworthy, think on these things, and then slowly they will come out in your speech and the way that you live. A very practical illustration from the book of James. My name is Robert Dean Steele. You have yourself a great and godly day, and this is your daily Bible class.